Now, Li Jingjing is a Chinese journalist and broadcaster who was a very great hit the last time she was on here. And we've brought her back to discuss one or two matters of pressing concern to the world about her country of China. Li, thank you very much for joining us again at this early hour for you. But let me ask you about Chris Patten, first of all, because it will have come as some kind of surprise to many viewers and listeners that it was Margaret Thatcher that signed the deal to return Hong Kong to China. It was egregiously taken from China, of course, in an unequal treaty, but with a time limit. That time limit ran out. Mrs. Thatcher agreed to hand over, but the British have never really accepted that they were handing Hong Kong back to China. And that may be the origin of some of the other issues that we're going to talk about tonight. Am I right?
Yes. You know what, George? But first, thanks for having me back to your show.
Welcome.
Always a pleasure to be here with you. And you know what? Probably have some connection issues. There's no image of me. Let me...
Well, we definitely need an image of you. We can hear you, so keep talking and we'll get the image back.
So, you know what? Like, I studied in the UK. And and I studied journalism in the UK. It's always funny to me. That whenever during the July the 1st, so the return date, the day that Hong Kong returned to the mainland, I can always see, you know, like on the BBC, The Guardian, I never see the celebration, like how happy Chinese are during this day. I mean, it's a big contradictions. When the day, biggest celebration, and you see how happy Chinese are, how happy many people in Hong Kong are, and we have big ceremonies. And then when I turn to BBC and Guardian, it's always how sad, how depressed, how oppressed people are. It's so bizarre to me. But then like, so that's probably the first hit I realized, okay, there's a big contradictions of big misunderstandings about this return of Hong Kong. But yeah, okay, so, and even this frustration for many people in Britain probably still lasts to today, because just a few days ago, yesterday, I saw a clip from BBC, I think. One of the experts was talking about, because now China finally have no foreign interferences, they can elect the government officials by themselves. And then the experts say, well, you know what, now basically Hong Kong is going back to the colonial period, except the governor is appointed by Beijing instead of London. It's totally outrageous.
It is. But what is worse is not being able to see you. So we're going to get you back. Li Jingjing is back with us in all her glory. Yes, she is. On that point, Li, now, again, coming down the road from Scotland today, I was listening to the BBC talking about the Hong Kong elections. And every bulletin, everyone stressed the fact that only those loyal to Beijing are able to participate as candidates in the Hong Kong elections. And in the end, I was shouting at the radio in the car, because I don't know if you yourself are fully aware of this, but as a member of Parliament for almost 30 years, I had to pledge allegiance after every single election with my hand on a Bible. I had to pledge allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen and all of her heirs and successors, whoever they were, whether good or bad. I had to pledge allegiance, or I would not have been allowed to sit down in my chair in the House of Commons. In fact, I wouldn't even have been allowed to be paid. I wouldn't have got my salary. Even though I was elected by the people, I had to pledge my allegiance to the British Crown before I could sit in the Parliament. Give me, if you would, any major differences between what I've just described as the British system and what China and Hong Kong now have in terms of theirs.
Thank you so much for pointing that out. Exactly. I think for every country, all the government officials, they have to pledge allegiance to their respective officials. So why is suddenly a problem when Hong Kong, China's territory, are requiring the same thing, patriots governing their own territory? Is a problem for many people in Britain and in America. It's so double standard and so hypocritical. So, and also, countries like the US or the UK keep criticizing China over the Hong Kong issue about democracy, where in the first place, Britain never gave Hong Kong democracy. Chris Patten was appointed by the UK back then. So if you've never given people the democracy that you've been praying all this time, so why you're making a fuss about Hong Kong now?
Indeed so. Now, on the subject of double standards, the Grand Prix successfully took place in Saudi Arabia the other week, even though there was blood on the tracks. But the Winter Olympics are now the subject of a boycott, at least on the political level. Have you gotten over yet the dreadful news that you will not be visited by Joe Biden as an official visitor at the Winter Olympics?
Yeah, too bad. Politicians won't come to the Winter Olympic Games because Olympic is a game all about politicians participating, right? I mean, who really cares about whether politicians are coming to this event, especially during this COVID period? But okay, so about this boycott, I think, first, it's not an athletic boycott. It's not a commercial boycott. It's a diplomatic boycott, which basically just means they don't send politicians to come here, but it doesn't have any impact on athletes participating, and also won't impact on the broadcasting on televisions, or doesn't have any impact on the commercial sponsors. So basically, it's a non-story, I think, particularly in the sporting circle. But so it doesn't affect China here. It doesn't affect the Winter Olympic Games. It definitely will happen, and a lot of people are waiting for this big moment. But I think this is maybe for Biden, it's more like sending a message domestically, because he has to act tough towards this China, this foreign enemy, right? To keep his butt in the chair in the White House for a longer time. He has to act tough. And that's for him domestically. And fourth, I think secondly, probably this is a chance for them to keep pushing their anti-China propaganda. By that, I mean the human rights abuse allegations, totally false, and the so-called genocide. I think the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, said they won't send any diplomats to Beijing because given the PRC's ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in Xinjiang and other human rights abuses, which are completely groundless, I have to say. For example, like last time I was on your show, George, I mentioned some of the facts. I can briefly mention again, because the genocide were totally just false allegations, because first, the Uyghur population is growing much faster than any other ethnic groups, not just in Xinjiang, in all China. And the populations of Uyghurs grew from 3.6 million in 1953 to 11.6 million to 2020. So in the past 67 years, the population of Uyghurs grew by 8 million. And second, Uyghurs got many favorable policies in terms of being enrolled in universities and got hired by government departments or companies. For example, if you are a Uyghur, you get a lot more scores in your college entrance exams. So that's basically to help Uyghurs to get higher education. And third, the forced labor and and also the one-child policy. I forgot to mention that. All ethnic groups were exempted from the one-child policy when the policy was only recently being abolished because the general declining birth rate. But when Han people could only have one child, Uyghurs can have 3 or 4 or multiple kids. So that 3 basically says that's no genocide going on. But we have to see where all these allegations about this so-called human rights abuses come from. Basically, either it's about genocide or forced labor or sterilization towards Uyghur women, all these atrocities, allegations come from the one think tank called ASPI in Australia. It's called Australian Strategic Policy Institute. And all this so-called China expert who have never came to China before, conducted all this research on their keyboard, twisting, abusing all these government papers and the data, and making all these allegations. And their research were amplified by all this big corporate media. But this think tank, why is this think tank doing this? If you look at the sponsors, you will find out their sponsors include multiple governments. Australian governments, US government, British government, Japanese government, and also the US Defense Department, Australian Defense Department. So this think tank is basically sponsored by several governments, all these governments that were really trying hard to contain China, and also the military-industrial complex. So you know what they are doing, why they are making these allegations.
Quite so.
And they give this. Yeah.
And these people don't like Muslims very much, and they don't like the Chinese very much, but they absolutely love Chinese Muslims. If you believe that, I've got a bridge in London I can sell you. Just quickly, the Chinese tennis player who was the original cause célèbre in the run-up to the Olympic Games, they've dropped that now because she's alive and well and playing tennis.
Exactly. That's just another excuse that all this media or this government officials, they were already pushing this boycott even before the tennis players thing happened. And now it's funny to see what they are so passionate about, treating this event as like last straw. Oh, see, that's what they're doing to their athletes. And they keep asking for, show me the images of her. We don't see images for where is she? And then the image of her pops up and so, no, that's just image. It could be an old image. Let me see a video of her. And the video pops up. She's having dinner with her friends, talking, and so, no, but she's not doing tennis-related stuff.
And then they dropped it altogether. Lee, it's been wonderful to see you again. I hope it's not long before we see you again.